In the heart of Los Angeles, where today the sounds of bustling cars and polished skyscrapers fill the air, there once stood a thriving Black community known as Sugar Hill. Located in the West Adams district, Sugar Hill wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a statement, a defiant, proud, and affluent enclave where Black doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and entertainers lived in stately homes, refusing to be boxed in by racist housing covenants that blanketed much of the city. It represented what Black excellence could look like when left to flourish. But behind the gates of that community's success was a storm slowly brewing, one made of politics, racism, and big money interests that would eventually wipe Sugar Hill off the map. In the early 1900s, LA had already been playing a quiet game of segregation. While it didn't have the visible Jim Crow laws of the South, it operated on a system of restrictive covenants, clauses in property deeds that prohibited the sale of homes to Black, Asian, Jewish, and Latino families. For decades, this kept neighborhoods like Beverly Hills, Hancock Park, and even most of West Adams white only. But Sugar Hill was the exception. A legal loophole allowed wealthy Black families to buy large homes in a section of West Adams, and suddenly, stars like Hattie McDaniel, Ethel Waters, and even Duke Ellington were neighbors. These weren't just names, they were icons, and they were Black, and they were living well. But the backlash was swift. White neighbors filed lawsuits. They argued that their property values would plummet, that the character of the neighborhood was changing. It wasn't about zoning or infrastructure, it was about race. These cases reached the courts, and for a while, Sugar Hill held its ground. In 1948, the Supreme Court ruling in Shelley v. Kramer declared that racially restrictive covenants were unenforceable, and Sugar Hill became a symbol of what progress could look like in America. But as is often the case, victory on paper doesn't always protect you from what's coming. By the 1950s and 60s, Los Angeles was exploding in growth. Freeways were being built at a breakneck pace, and the city was expanding westward. Urban planners, often white, often influenced by real estate developers, looked at Black and brown neighborhoods as obstacles, not communities. They needed land, and they didn't want to tear through Bel Air or Pacific Palisades, so they chose Sugar Hill. The justification? Urban renewal. The government claimed these areas were blighted or underdeveloped, but anyone who walked through Sugar Hill could see that was a lie. The homes were grand, the lawns immaculate. This wasn't Skid Row, it was elegance. But that didn't matter. The decision had already been made behind closed doors. In the 1960s, plans were drafted to expand the Santa Monica Freeway, also known as the 10. It would slice directly through the heart of Sugar Hill. Residents were given notice. Some were offered below-market buyouts. Others were told nothing at all, just given a deadline to vacate. Bulldozers moved in. Homes that once hosted jazz legends and civil rights meetings were demolished in days. Generations of family wealth, gone. Community ties, severed. And all of it done under the guise of progress. But progress for who? What makes this story even darker is how deliberate it all was. Internal city memos revealed that officials believed routing the freeway through Sugar Hill would meet minimal resistance. They saw a politically disconnected, economically vulnerable population. What they underestimated was the community's resolve. Lawsuits were filed, protests erupted, but in the end, the city and state had all the leverage and the funding. The 10 freeway was built, and Sugar Hill was erased. The aftermath was devastating. Families who had owned property for generations found themselves scattered across South LA and Inglewood. Some fell into poverty, others struggled to rebuild. The economic ripple effects are still felt today. Studies have shown that Black families in LA lost millions in generational wealth due to displacement during this era. And this wasn't an isolated case. What happened in Sugar Hill mirrored similar tragedies in cities like New York, Chicago, and Atlanta. Today, if you drive along the 10 freeway, you pass through what used to be Sugar Hill. There are no signs, no plaques, no acknowledgments, just pavement and traffic. Most Angelenos have no idea they're driving over a buried community. It's history that's been intentionally forgotten. But there's a growing movement to remember. Historians and community activists have been working to document the history of Sugar Hill. collecting photos, oral histories, and property records. Some want a memorial, others want reparations, but all of them agree this history matters, because without acknowledging what was done to Sugar Hill, it's impossible to understand the racial wealth gap, housing crisis, and urban segregation that still plague LA today. The destruction of Sugar Hill wasn't an accident. It was a decision, a calculated, profit-driven move that traded Black success for freeway lanes. And that decision is part of a larger pattern in American history, where Black neighborhoods are treated as disposable. In recent years, conversations about redlining, displacement, and environmental racism have begun to gain traction, and for good reason. Communities like Sugar Hill were targeted not just by racism, but by policy, and policy can be undone. Restoring what was lost isn't easy. The homes are gone, the families dispersed. But telling the story is the first step, making sure that names like Hattie McDaniel aren't remembered just for their movies, but for the communities they fought to preserve. There's a haunting irony here. The freeway that destroyed Sugar Hill is now often gridlocked with commuters trying to get to the same neighborhoods that once excluded Black families. The same white flight that fueled freeway expansion has now turned into gentrification, and as neighborhoods like West Adams become trendy again, developers are moving in fast, often without any understanding of the history beneath their feet. The story of Sugar Hill isn't just about one neighborhood. It's about what happens when a system decides who gets to stay and who has to go. It's about power, land, and the fight for dignity. And even though Sugar Hill is no longer on the map, its spirit survives in every corner of LA, where people are still fighting to keep their communities alive. So next time you're stuck on the 10, heading through West Adams, remember, beneath those lanes of concrete, there was once music, laughter, elegance, and pride. A neighborhood built by those who refuse to be kept out, and a reminder of what can happen when history isn't protected.